Hey friends, welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to watch Halloween 2018. Haven't watched it yet, I'm just now getting ready to. So I watched last week, technically earlier today for me recording wise, but in last week's video we talked about the original 1978 Halloween. I reacted to it, talked about my thoughts on it. It was a really good time. I loved the movie, but in this video we're talking about Halloween 2018. So first I'm going to share, before I watch it, kind of what I know about the movie, and then I'll go ahead and watch it, come back and share my thoughts on it. So, what I know about this one. I think I'm 100% sure. I looked it up just to be safe. I'm pretty sure this is a sequel just to the 1978 Halloween. From what I've heard, just first one, new one. So I'm curious to see what they're gonna do, because I think it takes place like 30 years later. I did look up like Halloween 2, like the premise of it, just out of curiosity, and it seemed like it pretty much picked up right where the first one left off. So I'm curious how they're gonna kind of pay respect to what happened back in 78, but also bring it kind of into the modern time, if it does take place 30 years later. So I'm curious to see what they're going to do with that. That's pretty much all I know about the movie. I haven't even watched a trailer for this one since the movie came out a couple of years ago, and I didn't even want to rewatch it to kind of like bring back and kind of anticipate where the movie was going. So I'm pretty much going into this one blind, which is pretty exciting. I like going into movies blind sometimes. So some expectations I have. I'm expecting some pretty cool kills, because there were some cool ones in the first movie. I'm curious what they're going to do soundtrack-wise, because obviously the music from the original is extremely iconic. I even knew it before watching the movie. And so I'm curious if they're going to have variations on it, or if it's going to be like exactly the same. And then I'm wondering how good the cinematography is going to be, because if you watch the previous video on this one, I was over the moon about the cinematography in this movie, of really it making you, of the first movie, of it making you feel like you're just a character observing all of these things happening. So I'm curious if it's going to follow a similar cinematic style, or if it's going to be more traditional to what movies these days are, even outside of the horror genre. So those are kind of my expectations going in. So I'm not going to kind of ramble any further. Let's just get right into this one. I'm going to watch the movie, come back, and then we'll talk about it and my full thoughts. Welcome once again, my name is Austin, and this channel is all about digging deeper and going further to better understand faith and film and everything that's in between. If that sounds exciting to you, make sure you click that subscribe button down below so you don't miss out on any new videos. Without further ado, let's jump right in talking about my thoughts on the 2018 movie Halloween. Really quick, just brief thoughts. I liked it. I thought it was pretty good. I definitely like the original one better for multiple reasons that I'll talk about as I kind of share my thoughts, but right off the cuff, I did enjoy it. It was fun. I liked it. The opening credits callback with the original Halloween font was awesome. They also, as I mentioned before seeing the movie, and I wondered what they would do with the music, they, from what I saw in the credits, brought back John Carpenter, and he kind of did like remixes of the traditional classic Halloween music, and so I really liked that. I thought it was a cool way to kind of bring it into the modern way with the style that they used, but it was still that classic Halloween kind of tune. From the opening scene, we got the two podcasters who go to the hospital to visit Michael Myers, where he's kind of been instated, and I did not realize this would be the first scene in the movie. I actually did remember this scene from the trailer, that he was like holding out his mask to him and everyone's going crazy around him. So one notable quote I liked from the scene is, "The mask is part of you," is what one of the podcasters says to Michael Myers. And that's so true, because one thing I forgot to mention talking about the 1978 Halloween is that there's one part in the final conflict with Laurie where she pulls his mask off, and he literally completely stops fighting her just to put his mask back on, because that is part of his identity and it is a part of him. And so I thought that was a really cool callback in that way, and it continues to show and reinforce the fact that this is how Michael identifies himself. He does not want to be seen as human. Well, I don't know if he actually doesn't want to be seen as human, but like this is his identity, this mask is a part of him. That was pretty cool. Another memorable quote, I don't remember if this was from the new Doctor or one of the podcasters, but they wonder if the only resolution for this is through conflict. And I thought that was really interesting because a lot of the theme of this movie is sort of PTSD and unresolved feelings and emotions from that night in 1978 that have continued until modern times. And so finding a way to resolve those, then, to a lot of the characters in this movie think that's got to be through conflict. You need to face that and overcome it, and that's how you're going to leave it behind. So I thought that was a really interesting quote. Kind of continuing on that, there are the podcasters who come to Laurie's house and say that they want to learn and understand both sides of the story and kind of understand why and learn more about Michael and why he is that way. To which Laurie responds, there's nothing to learn. Like we talked about in the previous video, this guy, if he is a guy, is just pure evil. Like, there's nothing to try and understand about that. And that, I think that can carry over into life application too, of like, there are things in this world that we are just not meant to understand. There are good things in this world we're not supposed to understand. There's bad things in this world we're not supposed to understand. But they are real. So again, thought that was a pretty cool parallel and callback to the original, as well as some kind of real life application. Speaking of callbacks, I did appreciate the classroom scene with Laurie's granddaughter, where I mean, I'd watched the movies back to back, so I easily picked up on it. I'm pretty sure it was almost the exact same shots of like the shot of the granddaughter in the classroom and then the shot of her looking out the window, and it turns out it's actually Laurie. That was a pretty cool callback to the original. I'm going to kind of talk about a few of my favorite callbacks, so look to those as we continue this discussion. Another memorable quote that came from Laurie is when one time she's talking to her daughter, kind of right when she's like, look, Michael is getting out one way or another, and she's talking to someone about her daughter and says that if the way I raised her causes her to hate me, but she is prepared, it was worth it. And I thought that was a really interesting kind of point of view that she had on the situation, and I noted it. I was like, I'm going to talk about this, but then it came back at the end of the movie, and I thought that was really cool too, that it came back in the end as they're in the final conflict, where Laurie says, I was wrong to raise you the way I did. I thought I was protecting you. So that was really cool to kind of see how she grew throughout the arc of her character in this movie. She hasn't changed too much, but that's definitely a huge perspective change for her. I was interested at the Loomis recording when they kind of interview him about Michael Myers after the babysitter killings that happened back in '78, where he says, there is nothing to be gained from keeping evil alive. I thought that was a really cool kind of parable almost of like, if there is evil in your life, in the world, that kind of thing, like there's nothing to be gained from keeping that evil alive. Like, you need to remove it from yourself, you need to overcome it and face it to eliminate it, that kind of thing. That was really cool. Probably one of my favorite quotes, even though it wasn't like mind-blowing like revelation. I thought it was a pretty interesting way of like looking at it, of like, this guy represents evil and there's no benefit to keeping evil around. We need to eliminate that to replace it with something that is good and pure. A little bit more about the podcasters. I did not expect them to die. For some reason, I mean, looking back on it, I guess you can kind of predict it. And maybe had I seen the trailer, I might have been able to predict it a little better. But like, that was surprising to me. I thought they would kind of be more of characters across the movie, of like going around back and forth trying to work in different areas, but they just straight up got killed like 30 minutes into the movie. So that was surprising to me. It was some pretty intense stuff that happened, but that was surprising. As we get to the point where Laurie shares after Michael is out, there's all these people getting killed and stuff. She says that she prayed every night for Michael to get out and escape so that she could kill him. And that was a really powerful line, just to show how much this has impacted her. She's to the point where she feels that she needs him to escape so that she can face him and defeat him. And I mean, obviously, there's a lot to dig into with that. I don't have time to dig into all that now, but that's some really interesting stuff. The only part of this movie that I kind of like, I'm not very physical in my reactions to movies. I just kind of watch them, take them in, that kind of thing. But I literally was like, what? Is the scene when the new Loomis Doctor saves Michael Myers and kills the one sheriff, I was like, wait, what are we doing? And then he like puts on his mask and is like, oh, so that's what that feels like, and puts his body in the car in anticipation that he's gonna come back. I was like, what are they doing here? Like, are they pulling like a switcheroo and like Michael Myers like transfers to his body and he's the killer for the rest? I was like, I don't know how I feel about that. I was almost like, if this is the way the movie's going. But thankfully it didn't. Like, that didn't really go anywhere. So that was kind of why I didn't like it, is like the scene happens and it's shocking, and then like less than 5 minutes later, Michael Myers just kills the doctor anyways, and it's like, we didn't really need that. Like, Myers could have just come back, killed the sheriff, and took off towards Laurie's house. Like, I don't know, it felt unnecessary. But I mean, it didn't hugely detract from the movie, but I was like, what? I don't know. So that was an thing to me. So that was probably the only real negative that I had towards the movie. Other than that, I did enjoy it. All of the callbacks, especially when we get into the final fight also, when she's searching around the house looking for him and she thinks he's in the closet, like, that's a really cool callback to the closet when she was trapped, and it's kind of reversed roles even though he's not actually in there. That was pretty cool. All in all, I really did enjoy the movie. Like I said, I think the first one was not much better, but it was definitely better. It was much better, I'll say it. I wasn't thrilled in this one. I don't consider it necessarily a negative. I think it still worked for the movie, but I wasn't thrilled that they showed a lot of Michael Myers, like in pretty much full body or full face, at least like shoulders up. Like for the first maybe 30-40 minutes of the movie, you don't really see him, but then as it gets like really rolling and ramping up, like, you see a lot of him. And that was something I really liked about the first one. Like I said, of the best movie monsters are the ones we don't see. Like, you only ever get quick flashes. Like, if you're gonna see Michael Myers pretty much full body in the original Halloween, it's gonna be like a second or less, and you're barely gonna get a good look at him, and it's gone. And so that was really cool, because you're kind of, like I said, piecing together those fractions that you're seeing of him. And where this one, it's just like, here he is. And it's like, he's definitely still menacing, but he's not quite to the caliber of menace that it is in the original. So that definitely lost a little bit of effect for me. Like I said, it doesn't detract from the movie too much, but it was definitely something worth mentioning. And I think that definitely did contribute to the fact that I actually found the original first one pretty scary. Like, I finished it, and it was getting, like, it was starting to get dark when I finished it, and I'm like looking out the window just a little extra. But after watching the new one, I feel like it was less horror and more like thriller, drama, kind of into action at the end. Mostly thriller drama though, where the first one is definitely like a horror movie, obviously. And so if I was to like revisit one of these, I'm definitely going to pick the original. It's definitely superior as it has more scares. I think the use of the cinematography and how creative they got in the original of really immersing you in the story, making you feel like the camera is a character following these people around. Where in this one, I did mention in the last video, I was hoping the cinematography would kind of reflect that, and they definitely did in scenes. There was some POV shots, that kind of thing, but it was much more contemporary, standard, run-of-the-mill, what you would expect from a modern horror movie, or just movie in general these days. So I think there's a lot of things that I did like about this one, but definitely it's better done in the original, like, for sure. The 2018 Halloween is definitely one I'll revisit. I did enjoy it, as I mentioned. Only maybe two real kind of negatives about it being the new Doctor and how much screen time Michael Myers has, but both were great. I'm enjoying going through that classic horror and then just kind of like a follow-up to it too. So next week I'm going to be watching The Shining for the first time, so get ready for that if you're excited. I know that's considered one of the scariest movies ever made, so I'm excited to check that one out. I also picked up Dr. Sleep recently. I don't think I'll include it in this series, but I'll be watching it. If that's something you want to get my thoughts on, I can do that as well, so let me know in the comments for my Shining video if that is something you'd want to check out when that goes live. thank you as always for sticking around to the end of this video. I think this one turned out a little longer than the last one, so thank you for indulging me. I hope you enjoyed kind of my discussion and thoughts on it. Share in the comments down below what you thought of this movie, because I'm curious, especially for like longtime fans of the franchise, since I've only seen the original and this one, so there's a lot of kind of culture and history surrounding the character in the franchise that I just don't know of. So share what you thought. I know it was a little bit controversial, this one, a little bit more, so I'm curious to see what the general audience and fans thought, that kind of thing. So thank you once again. I'm thankful that you stuck around to the end of this video. Hope you're enjoying this series. I'll see you in the next video.